Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're at the 201st Governance and Risk Call here at MakerDAO. My name is Peyton. I go by Pros11 online, and I am one of the governance facilitators here at MakerDAO. Really excited to be here with everyone today. As you might have noticed, this call is being recorded, so hello to anyone watching afterwards as well. Seen a lot of familiar faces in the audience, as well as some new ones perhaps. So if this is your first call, welcome. This is our kind of weekly get together where we talk about what's going on in Maker, both with the votes, proposals, ideas, kind of general community discussion, and talk about them. So welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Few ground rules to go over before we get too deep into things, I guess. Number one, let's try not to talk over one another. This is an open call, so we do really encourage participation. But it can get really hard to listen or participate in if people are cutting each other off and talking over one another. There are a couple of facilitation tools you can utilize that'll make my job a little easier. If you'd like to kind of hop in line to the speakers list, so to speak, you can utilize the raised hand function in Zoom. If you're on the desktop version, that should be under the reactions button on the bottom. You can also always drop a comment or question in chat and we'll try to read it off as soon as possible. But with that in mind, it is an open meeting. We really do encourage questions, comments, general input from your perspective. So we hope you'll feel comfortable enough to join us in some of the discussions. I think that's enough housekeeping. So let's move slides here and get into what we're talking about today. As usual, we'll go over the votes, what's happening in the world of Maker improvement proposals, as well as some highlights from the forum. We don't have any specific initiative updates today, so after that, we will get into our discussion topic, which is around the budget reallocation and core unit accountability framework. So a lot of talks going on in the DAO right now about reducing spending and kind of a question on like how you practically carry that out in a decentralized organization. So after that, if we have time, we can always go into open discussion, but really encourage your thoughts and participation when we get there. All right, let's get into governance votes so I can stop talking. Had a pretty easy week to recap on the polls side. We still have the one ongoing green light. If you'll go to the next slide there, Thomas, thank you. Is the backed finance short-term bond ETF. Voting on that continues till Monday, so please go ahead and get over there and vote if you haven't already. And we had one concluded ratification poll that'll be covered in our next MIPS segment. Cool, that brings us on to executive proposal. So for those of you that have been watching the forum and the New Spells channel in chat, this one has been a few growing pains putting together, but the good news is we are on track to have that executive release tomorrow. That would take care of the SocGen and HV Bank onboarding. There is a forum post pinned as to why that was delayed from our typical Wednesday date, and if good relevant information there. But it will also be in this a little bit in the spell copy, so you can read about kind of what took place and why that's ready to go now. For next week's executive, we are planning to have a drawdown on the HV Bank that's being onboarded, a kind of redo of the Keeper 3 network stream, as well as handling some Oracle's core unit MKR stream housekeeping. Basically, they've claimed all the MKR they need to for their first years of vesting. So now we'll be kind of deauthorizing the rest of it that wasn't needed. In preparation of continuing on with their agreement. Cool. That is more than enough talking for me, so I'm very happy to hand the mic over to Pablo to give us an update on what's happening in MIPS land.
Yep. Thank you, Hayden, and hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Cool. So as you know, we had only one ratification poll for this governance cycle, that for Patrick Chase onboarding as a global facilitator. The ratification poll has passed unanimously, so congratulations, Patrick. And that's it for a ratification poll. So let's move on to proposals in RFC. So the frozen period has kicked in, which means that you should expect proposals eligible to enter the August cycle not to undergo any substantial non-cosmetic change, lest they be pushed back to be eligible for the September cycle instead. We have two top-level MIPs, MIP 76, Makershire Redux, initially introduced as a special purpose fund and rejected. This proposal has been reworked into a top-level MIP that addresses some of the concerns that it originally raised. It will be formally submitted for this coming governance cycle. And MIP 72, which would authorize excess capital as a real-world asset arranger for MakerDAO. And this one will remain in RFC for now. We also have two coordinate budgets that will be entering this upcoming cycle, one for the DAI Foundation core units. This one includes multiple options that cover bear and super bear market scenarios, in addition to a base case that is a slightly reduced version of their previous budget. And we also have the Oracle's core units budget. This one provides us options, either a reiteration of their previous budget or a new budget reduced by 10%. Bundled with an exemption from further reductions for 1 year. So, coordinated forwardings, we have 3 of those for the following core units: events, immune-fi security, and strategic happiness. Only the events forwarding proposal is eligible to enter the August cycle, and severance payment has been proposed for this one. We have also one facilitator onboarding. Can we go to the, yes. So Psychonaut has resubmitted a proposal to be onboarded as a facilitator for the immune-fi security core unit. It's probably worth mentioning that the onboarding proposal for these core units, immune-fi, will remain in RFC. That is, it will not be formally submitted for now after a compromise between the parties has been reached. Next slide. We have 3 amendments, one that amends MIP 50, that is the direct deposit module, to make it more general, in particular not specific to lending protocols, one that amends the somewhat awkward coordinated forwarding process we currently have in place, and these 2 will be entered in the August cycle, and finally one that amends MIP 0 and introduces the notion of retrospection dates for MIPs. This one will remain in RFC until some issues have been addressed, as stated by its author. And finally, we have one proposal that has been withdrawn. Next slide, please. So recognized delegate Kianga Darrington has withdrawn her proposal to create a special purpose fund that would have retained her as the interim chief legal officer of MakerDAO. Let's move on to the important dates. So the August formal submission window opens on Monday the 1st. That is this next Monday, and the August ratification polls from this will go up on Monday the 8th. And that's it from me. Thank you very much, everyone.
Right on, Pablo. Appreciate the fresh slide designs as well. Great. So yeah, please do check out the MIP update and everything in the forum there, in case there's anything you missed or want to revisit. But that should take us to Artem and the forum updates.
Yes, thanks, Pete. Posted the link. And welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday, and welcome to the GNR Forum recap. And we'll be going over the week of July 21st to the 27th. And let's get started with this week's announcements. First up, active community member, 𝘬𝘁 published their delegate platform on Monday.
Hey, Artem.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you make sure your output is going to your mic, not your laptop? Because it sounds like it's your laptop mic picking up your voice.
Ooh, let me check. Speaker, yes.
That happened. Is it better now? Check, check.
Significantly better. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, that's weird. All right. Thanks, David. All right. So let's restart this. So 𝘬𝘁, active community member, he published his delegate platform this Monday, and his core values include 1, simplifying the core protocol by eliminating unnecessary complexity, also developing sustainable and decentralized systems, and making sure that MKR holders' interests are represented. Now, in terms of voting expectations, 𝘬𝘦 states that they will support proposals that anticipate strong risk-adjusted returns and object to overly expensive proposals which have low potential impact. So also keep an eye for the next Meet Your Delegate call announcement, which should feature 𝘬𝘦 and their delegate platform. Next up, we have a double whammy by Real World Finance. Now, the Real World Finance core unit has completed all necessary work for onboarding 𝘧𝘰𝘮𝘪𝘯𝘢, the 𝘱𝑔 and HVB vault types. With this work complete, the core unit will now focus on spinning off a new core unit centered for North American market. The original Real World Finance core unit will begin to transition towards becoming a MetaDAO. And the community can track the spell code and executive vote content on GitHub, which are provided at the bottom of the post. Additionally, the Real World Finance core unit has returned 2 million DAI from the DSS vest and back to the Maker protocol, showing a voluntary responsibility for core units to help mitigate effects of bear market budget constraints. All right, very awesome. Now let's move on to our signals. There's currently one signal going on, and it's in line with the discussion topic. During the first part of July 20th's DVC meeting, the Strategic Finance Core Unit presented two options for the DAO to choose between adjusting budgets and returning to break-even operating cash flow. And option one is broad cut, which require less overhead, however, at the disadvantage of treating all core units equally, regardless of their performance or spending habits. And option two is tactical reallocation, which involves allocating budgets based on merit and rely on the development of evaluative framework and KPIs to estimate each core unit's performance. Now, the signal request asks the community which of these two options are more preferred, with multiple choice allowed, and the signal ends on July 30th. It's a short signal lasting only 1 week. Currently, the majority vote sits at option two, which is tactical reallocation. And that's it for the GNR forum recap. But if you want some more announcements, discussions, and ongoing initiatives, check out the forum recap on the forum thread, which is now a continuous thread. It's pinned under updates. So check it out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Artem. Did want to highlight a couple things there. Paper did post a signal towards the end of yesterday. So do check that out. I provided the link in the chat. Might be some good, or there already is some good discussion going on there. And then second, also want to highlight 𝘬𝘦's Meet Your Delegate meeting coming up next Wednesday. Look for forum post after this call. Cool. Thanks, Artem. All right, that should take us to our discussion segment. I will pass the mic off to Thomas to introduce in a second here, but did kind of want to invite everyone, take a little stretch. If you plan on participating in the segment, you can consider turning your camera on. This is recorded on YouTube, but they haven't done anything about my face being on there, so don't be too shy. But yeah, so if you'd like to participate, go ahead, get ready. This is our kind of active session, so do you want to give a special shout out to that before Thomas says the introduction?
All right. Thank you, Peyton. Hey, hello, everyone. It's Thomas Fluter with GovComms, just here to introduce our discussion segment. That is today going to be on the signal request of the budget reallocation and core unit accountability framework. Our special guest here today is Pipko with the Strategic Finance core unit, and he will be here to present their information. I'm going to switch over briefly to their presentation, and I'll let Pipko go ahead and take it from here.
Hi, everyone. This is an update to the presentation that I think we gave last week on the signal request, talking about core unit accountability, etc. So before we get started, brief disclaimer that we always give, but this report is not provided for tax or it's provided for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, regulatory, or tax advice. And I think we can go on to the next slide. Next slide again. So at a high level, to summarize what Ace and Adrian talked about on the last call, but the DAO has weathered the collapse of some of the larger lenders in the space, mostly CeFi lenders, pretty well. We haven't incurred any bad debt to date linked to those lenders. That being said, the overall revenue of the protocol has declined, and we're now faced with declining revenues, but a stable budget given the current budgeting process and how the budgets have been stacked on a historical basis. So our view is we need a way, either a broad cut or a tactical reallocation, to figure out how to reallocate capital to the different core units and bring it in line with what we expect revenue will be on a go-forward basis, at least for the next 6 to 12 months. And this is really to respond to the, I think it was the signal crest discussing what the target level of profitability should be for the protocol. And that was confirmed on an on-chain vote, saying basically somewhere between break even to plus 5% was the takeaway. So I think we can skip some of the slides around the current financial situation, revenue and cash forecast, et cetera. And then if you don't mind going to the slide with the two options, option 1 and option 2, to talk about it. So the first option that we discussed during the call was a broad cut. Here, this would be a percentage cut across all core units. The pros are the reductions can be made quickly. It's simple to implement. I think on the con side, we are treating all core units equally, especially regardless of performance or spend, which rewards people who have over budgeted, et cetera. And we also have the potential to cut mission critical activities. So for example, cutting the budget of oracles or protocol engineering might hurt some of our ongoing projects or even our just day-to-day running of the protocol projects. The second option that we proposed was a tactical reallocation. I'll go into this in more detail, but the idea behind this is instituting a high-level KPI and budgeting process where we'll ask core units to tell us what their strategic priorities are. They'll propose KPIs that are linked to those strategic priorities and also target where they think they'll be after the end of the budgeting period. And then their performance versus the KPIs that they chose, targeted, and then executed against will be used as information for future capital allocations to that core unit, so we can better understand which core units are creating value and actually delivering on the promises that they made to the protocol, and which core units might not be delivering on the promises. The big con with this solution is it's going to be time consuming. We have to spin up new processes. And just to touch on something we discussed during the delegate office hours, we don't have any plans for a broader MBR or OKR process. Right now, we're primarily thinking about KPIs. How do core units select their own KPIs, and how do they communicate their KPIs and that progress against those KPIs back to the DAO? So next slide. So there's 4 main components to the rebudgeting process under a tactical reallocation. The first would be initial capital allocation and KPI selection. This would be when we right size the budget for the new revenue environment that we're operating within. After the core unit has performed against their KPIs, delegates and maker holders would evaluate their KPI attainment and then use that attainment to inform budget requests and future capital allocation. And the process would repeat. So with the new budget that's being dispensed to the CUs, they'll set new KPIs, and this will provide us with a way to keep core units accountable and also do this in a data-driven, permissionless, and fully open way. Next slide. So here we were talking about some of the big issues with the current process and how our proposal for a tactical reallocation would fix some of these issues. So right now there's lack of visibility and transparency. We think by core units saying what they're actually working on and what they think that they will accomplish, they'll be held more accountable, and also it'll provide delegates and maker holders more transparency into their activities. Performance is difficult to evaluate. As part of this program, we see core units having 3 KPIs, simple high-level KPIs that are easy to measure, but also are linked to value creation that the CU is working on. And then the final big period, and at least personally, I think this is one of the biggest issues we have with our current budget process, is the budgeting periods aren't simultaneous. And therefore, any maker, holder, or delegate, when trading off between 2 different budgets, not only has to make a trade-off in capital, but they also have to do it in time. And that's very difficult when you're not presented 2 budgets at the same time. On the next page, I know that there'll be some concerns and mitigates. This is not an exhaustive list, but just to run through them quickly, strategic finance will not be picking your KPIs. We will also not be determining your KPI attainment. This will be determined by delegates and maker holders whenever it needs to be a qualitative attainment metric. In terms of actually executing on this process, we think that we'll be able to execute a budget reallocation process in the next 2 months, and we're willing to work with core unit facilitators, members, delegates, and maker holders to help them with some of the analysis associated with this process. And there will be a slight enhanced time requirement, but we hope that the KPIs will be simple and easy to maintain, and we can put in place dashboards or reporting so that ideally these flow as straight through as possible. Next slide. So to talk about the core unit budget process in a little bit of detail, there's 4 main stages. We have 3 of them on this slide. So the first stage is the core unit budget and KPI proposals. So delegates and maker holders would determine a targeted level of spend similar to the signal request last month. Core units would provide budgets, lay out operating activities, strategic goals, and KPIs, essentially making a promise to the protocol: if you give us this money, this is what we're going to accomplish. And as part of that process, they would also lay out what is baseline lights on spend and what is the growth spend, so that delegates can understand whether they would be cutting any potential mission critical activity. They would publish or communicate their KPIs as part of this, and then strategic finance would basically aggregate all these different budgets up into an aggregate level view that the delegates and maker holders can then use to determine the proper capital allocation to each core unit. The second process is that stage. So here, the maker holders and delegates really have 2 main jobs. The first is they need to match the total budget to the targeted spend level. It's difficult to say that we're going through a budgeting process if at the end of the process we don't hit our actual budget that we wanted to spend. And then the second piece would be figuring out the best way to allocate capital among the core units to hit that targeted level of spend. An illustrative governance process, and I know that there'll be some discussion about this, but also we're the strategic finance team, we're not the GovAlpha team, so they should also chime in, would be you have multiple different budget proposals that are created and put forward. They would be competing, and that would allow people to vote for those proposals on chain. And that way you wouldn't necessarily need as much consensus off chain, although you would need consensus to come up with a budget proposal. The third stage is capital allocation and KPI retargeting. So here the budget would be voted on and confirmed on chain by maker holders. Core units communicate to delegates and maker holders the impact of the lower or higher budget that they received and how that changes the KPIs that they might be able to accomplish. And then delegates and maker holders confirm that these new targets are reasonable and the core unit's not either sandbagging or setting too high a target that might hurt them down the road. The final step of this entire process is choosing KPIs. If you go to the next slide. So we've put forth some criteria for effective KPIs, but we really want these to be high level, very easy to measure and very easy to understand, because we know that the moment that these KPIs go in place, people will be incentivized to accomplish them, but also to game them if they're gameable. And along these lines, on the next page, we put together an example KPI proposal for the strategic finance unit. If you go to the next slide. So here we've laid out 3 illustrative KPIs for strategic finance. The first would be PSM bond revenue in calendar year 2023, for example, setting a $10 million target, and the weight would be 30% of our total score. The second is a launch of a stablecoin treasury management strategy by Q4 22. This is basically Makershire. And here it would be determined by whether the target is true or false. Did we actually attain revenue or not? And the final piece would be ongoing development of financial reporting and analysis. And this would be, since it's sort of qualitative, voted on by maker holders and delegates to determine our attainment. And that attainment determination process, for example, is laid out on the next page. If you flip to that. So for example, PSM bond revenue, let's say we were able to get 25 million of revenue out of that. Here we would be over attaining. Let's say we failed to launch stablecoin treasury management strategy. We get 0 points for that. And then development of ongoing financial reporting and analysis, it would be a qualitative metric voted on chain, and we would get high ideally. So this is an example process. I'm happy to open up the floor to questions, and I'm sure Ace, Adrian, and myself can answer any questions that you guys might have.
Awesome. Thanks for the presentation there. Quick reminder that if you would like to speak, you can use that raise hand feature, as I'm seeing David doing. And you can also drop some comments in chat. But since you have a raised hand, David, why don't you take it away?
Hey, how's it going? First off, sorry for the background noise, if there is any. I'm out running an errand. But I had a question. So if this were to pass and this framework were to be adopted, does that mean that basically it would be one ultimate budget proposal at the end of it all, that the delegates would take the individual per unit proposals and then combine them all into like one mega proposal? Is that my understanding? And then also with 20 core units, like the way that the framework is proposed, it seems very heavy because those 20 core units have to put up their individual budgets. And then, and then they have to basically get a response from the SF and delegates and whoever's working on the counter budget proposals. And there's supposed to be multiple counter budget proposals for each team. Yeah, it just seems very, very heavy. And so, some comments on whether I'm understanding that right would be great.
So is your question about the budget proposals that are generated by the core units, or the competing budget proposals that would be voted on?
I guess a bit of both. I just don't really think this. It seems unfeasible just because of the scale.
So I think this is a similar process to the process we currently have. When people request a budget, they post on the forum, there's some feedback, they might change elements of the budget. The issue with that current process is they're not happening concurrently. And therefore, there's no way to make sure that the total spend amount doesn't go past what our targeted spend amount is.
Yeah,
okay, got it. But just sorry, let me just finish really quickly. So basically, for example, there is a November formal submission requirement for budgets according to the new MIP 40. So that means that October would be RFC, but October is not RFC for your individual core unit budget anymore. Actually, your core unit budget would have had to have been submitted even earlier, like August, so that it can go through this process that's being proposed. Is that correct?
I don't know about the timing. I would have to think about that, and maybe Ace, you have a view on that. But I think the place where you create incremental time is really around the competing budget proposals. And I think you have to have that so that you don't have a world where the delegates are just coming up with a proposal on their own and that's the only proposal that people can vote for. But for the core units, at least my personal view is if we're giving them money in return for specific operating results, they should be telling us what they're going to execute on in return for that money. And that's not currently the case in all core units today.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
I'll just add that, yeah, we understand this is going to be a time-consuming process, and it's going to be a lot of investment from a lot of different people within the DAO. But the alternative is essentially to do nothing or suboptimally allocate capital throughout the DAO, both of which we feel are untenable options. So, you know, we're more than willing to work with the community to roll up our sleeves and help them, you know, go through this process and build this framework. And also add, like, you know, this is really a one-off sort of situation that we hope to, you know, bootstrap a KPI process and then go through this sort of exercise, you know, essentially once every 6 months until our cash flow stabilizes. You know, it's quite difficult to plan on a long-term basis when your annualized revenue goes from 200 million a year to 20 million in 6 months. Thankfully, we have some, you know, diverse, diversified revenue streams coming with Monetalis and other you know, institutional asset managers as counterparties. But until we get there, we need to plan and be flexible.
Thanks for that, Mark. Got quite the speakers list brewing and a lot of chat going on. So would maybe encourage some of you who are willing to hop on the mic to maybe raise your hand and enter the speakers list if you have some good comments on chat. Just scrolling here, saw a nice comment from Porter, you know, kind of noting some of the downsides of potential KPI scorecards like the Wells Fargo situation where people, salespeople are trying to meet metrics, so they'll make fake accounts or what have you in order to meet those. So definitely some good perspective there. Cool. I believe Eric was next up in the hand raise order. So if you want to take the mic, go for it.
Yeah, hey, it's Eric. Sorry, I have a little bit of background noise. I think it's a great set of KPI initiatives. One thing I just wanted to point out, and I'm going to use one specific example to make my point, but you really need to set the KPIs realistically or sensibly so that you actually are getting the kind of behavior you want. I know Porter pointed out Wells Fargo. One concern, say on the bond revenue, you got to hit 10 million. A lot of that's going to be a function of how the interest rate curve moves over the next year. And if short rates go real high, you'll nail that. If short rates fall down again to a recession, you're going to fail. But neither one of those is that much into your control. And so one, I think you want to try to focus on things under your control in the KPI. And two, you want to look about perverse behavior, because if I want to lock in 10 million of bond revenue, how do I do that? Right now, I'm going to go out a little longer. So I could be encouraging you to buy longer bond assets, but that doesn't help our liquidity. That could put our liquidity profile at risk. So this is a very complicated area, but I just think when you're doing KPIs, and this is going to be a challenge, they need to be thought through carefully around what do people really control and what are the adverse side effects you could get out of them. And so this would require expertise, you know, and really making sure these types of KPIs are what Maker wants. You know, I think they're great, but it's hard to do this well, particularly in the centralized world. Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with any of that. That being said, just because something's hard to do well doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We need to do this from a P&L perspective, is my view.
I agree, but I'm saying even on the bond example, it's not well thought out, right? The incentives are bad. You could really put additional risk on.
This is not what we would present, and we're not saying these are our KPIs. We're just presenting examples for the community. You know, we, like every other core unit, would go through this process, talking to delegates and maker holders to decide what our KPIs would be. And, you know, we expect that any, you know, shortcomings in how we've thought through our own KPIs would be brought up in such conversations.
No, I'm fully supportive. I think I just want to emphasize the level of expertise this is going to take across lots of different key areas. So not only at the CU, but you're going to need delegates probably who are going to have an informed view and say, no, that's not right. You know, if you have one delegates, you're a jack of all trades, master of none. Well, they have the expertise to wade into the KPIs for a given unit. Like on PE, I couldn't say jack. You know, on yours, I would probably have a pretty strong view. So again, I think we're going to really have to push to strong delegates with subject matter expertise to make this work. And I want to make it work. I think it's important.
Cool. Definitely providing good perspective there. Thanks, Eric. Noticing a few more comments in the chat, but nothing I'm prepared to read out yet. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Code Knight if you want to take the mic.
Sure. So typically KPIs get assessed on maybe a monthly or quarterly basis. How would we envision doing? We set the KPIs in August or October or whenever, and then are we having a meeting every month or two to kind of discuss where everyone's at on their KPIs? How is that going envisioned?
So the current vision is a 6-month period. We want to set longer term KPIs so that we're not micromanaging the different core units with short-term sort of deliverables. And at the same time, we want to keep in mind that our revenue has declined 60% plus in the last 6 months. So we need it to be a short enough period where we can react and reallocate capital if needed.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, another shout out, like a lot of good comments and back and forth going on in the chat. If you want this to reach the recording and other people watching, please do consider hopping on the mic. Questions are a little easier to me to pull out, so I will go ahead and pull one out from Klaus saying, can't we try this system out with a few CUs to see what works and any downfalls before bringing everyone through this process? So I think that's like kind of a question directed more towards SF in terms of implementation.
Well, let's be clear. The purpose of this is not only to have accountability and KPIs for CUs, but it's also to get back to break-even cash flow. And that's not going to happen without changes, accountability, and understanding the value that each CU is creating for the money that they're being provided. You know, we can hope that the market rebounds and lending demand magically recovers, but hoping is not a good business strategy. It's not a good way to run a protocol or a project. So I don't think there's any real advantage to going through a beta test with a few core units, because the whole purpose is to allocate across the entire DAO and figure out how we can get back to break-even cash flow. Like, this is what maker holders want. So I think it's in the community's interest to follow through on maker holders' desires.
Thanks, Mark. If you'll allow a brief aside, I grew up playing competitive chess, and one statement that always stuck with me was, you don't want to be playing hope chess, which is like hoping your opponent doesn't make the best move, right? You don't want to just be wishing that things will work out. So appreciate the initiative. Did see a hand from Seb, so go ahead and pass up the mic.
Yeah, sure. It just occurred to me that last year at Real World Finance, I set a goal of 300 million real world assets at the end of the year. Obviously, it was super far, and the objective was stupid at the beginning, but there was a reason for it. And what I liked is that it puts you under pressure, and we delivered something. So the fact of not achieving it, well, it's not the end of the day. And at the end, people can say, well, you did not achieve, you should be fired. And I mean, fine. But at least you have something to discuss on, because otherwise I have no idea what people are forecasting to do, achieving to do. And so there is no discussion. So I think maybe it should be with a social wrapper to say, well, we have numbers, but numbers are KPIs are not representing everything. They are just a basis for discussion, because I am not sure they are linked to a lot of implications for Coinit. No one is fired because you are below 20%, something like that. If I'm correct.
Could you maybe clarify the question there, Seb? Sorry.
No, I want just to give you an example of a beta test that we kind of did last year, and just to see what would be the implications of this beta test, assuming it would be full and well, one KPI, 300 million in the year. At the end, we are at 10 or 20, I don't remember. I don't know, Pipko, if the framework is providing a key result, or is it just to start a discussion and it's still up to the delegates and make a token holders to make a decision?
So kind of basically asking, like, are the KPIs themselves actionable, right? Like,
yeah, is it automated and without human judgment?
I
I mean,
my...
ideally, I'm sorry, Peyton.
No, go for it, Frank.
Like, if you think about what has been KPIs for every single DeFi platform, protocol, it's been what? TVL. That's pretty much it. TVL and how much a DAI is outstanding, how much Frax is outstanding, how many wallets are holding DAI. I think it's a less than 1 million. How many stable coins are being held by wallets? I think it's about 18 million. Whatever the facts are, that's been the KPIs, right? So I don't really agree with strategic finance all the time, right? Like, there are things I agree with, things I don't agree with, but I think Web3 needs this. And I think MakerDAO is the leading governance platform that can bring this into DeFi, into the ecosystem. So we should at least give it a shot. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, then yeah, you know, let's automate it down the road. And I think we're writing the playbook here of governance, and we should at least give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, then, you know, at least we tried, but we moved on beyond TVL and opening Wells Fargo accounts.
Thanks for
All
bringing
right,
that
let me
perspective,
give this a
Frank.
shot.
Yeah, go for it.
So, so what's important to the DAO is profitability as well as maker holders, right? Everything we've been focusing on, you know, when revenues were great, everyone was throwing money at CUs. Now all of a sudden we have a poll that says we got to run revenue 0, right? Or, you know, profitability 0, which means we're going to have to cut budgets. So if you want to look at this in kind of the least productivity hit way, you do it at the top. I suggested coupling maker vesting. You can do it differently by just offering rewards if we meet a certain revenue level or a certain profitability level to all players, delegates, CUs, you know, et cetera, right? And this idea that you're going to fine grain this on CUs, I think we take a huge productivity hit because there's going to be a huge discussion involved with it. And I like the idea of the CUs setting their own KPIs, right? That they can set their own targets. That's a great thing. And I would like to see that more. But forcing it on the DAO without doing a test, I agree with this idea. Let's do a test with 1 or 2 CUs that want to step up to kind of modulate this. But my proposal or my suggestion would be think about something to do to align incentives for performance for the entire DAO against, you know, what everyone wants, which is effectively profitability or at least profit, you know, revenue neutral.
Yeah, I mean, I've been supportive of performance-based compensation since the start, and I argued it publicly, privately, in many individual conversations, is having a portion of maker compensation tied to DAO-wide objectives or even core unit objectives. The time, the feedback I got was, you know, basically everyone was opposed to that. And, you know, I think that's ultimately the direction that the DAO needs to move in. There needs to be proper incentive alignment, and it needs to be linked to like value being delivered. And whether you measure that in, you know, revenue or, you know, higher security or a better user experience, you know, it doesn't really matter. But ultimately, you know, the value that's created for the community, you know, must be aligned with, you know, people's compensation and performance. So we didn't put that into this plan because, you know, one, the maker compensation has been an extremely divisive and contentious you know, subject across the community. We felt that including that, however well intentioned and aligned and logical it would make with this proposal, it would further delay any actions to be taken and any return to break-even profitability.
Thanks for that point, Maker Man. In response, Mark. Do you see another hand from Funkar from the Governance House delegation? If you want to take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So I basically just want to kind of follow on that idea from Makerman. Like what I feel like, not just in Maker, but in other DAOs, like there is sometimes like not alignment, like what we actually trying to achieve. And there has been many times that like, that's what MKR holders wants, that's what delegates wants. But like, I think it's like people are saying it, but like there is no like we have actually agreed on that like common consensus that like the profitability is the only goal, for example, for Maker. Maybe we want more market share. Maybe this is the time when we should actually grow, because others might not be that strong as we are. Therefore, we can like get more out of the bear market. So what I would like to kind of see overall with this kind of initiative, it's like make a step back and have this discussion, like what is actually the best way forward for us to be successful long term. Because budget cuts like across, just like do that just for sake of like getting back on profitability might not, like it might seems like the best idea, but it might not be long term actually the best for Maker MKR holders, and it might not even be what majority wants. It's just like because it was the simplest way what to do. So like my question here is like maybe for the strategic finance, like have you been considering like to first start kind of with the Maker overall with KPIs and kind of alignment, like strategic alignment, and then like the goals and kind of vision and mission, and like then go like step number 2 to core units, how we can together achieve those? Or do you think like we should go rather bottom up?
Yes, we do already have a list of a few major overarching strategic goals, as well as about 10 KPIs that support them. So thinking about that, it's like ETH market share, rep Bitcoin market share, and DAI outstanding. And what we're doing with this process is basically following the will of Maker holders. Like Maker holders voted on chain to run the protocol at break even. My personal opinion would be that I'm quite comfortable running at a loss, given that we have 4 to 5 years runway. But if Maker holders decide to do something with on-chain ratification, my team is going to take steps to carry out the will of Maker holders. Our team is taking direction from Maker holders. We're not, unilaterally making decisions. And this proposal was created to try and make a completely open and fair and transparent framework to meet the goals that the Maker holders have stated to the community and to us. So that's kind of how we're thinking about moving this process forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the response. If you can maybe share with me just the overarching KPIs, I might have not been aware of those. It would be perfect. Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Awesome. We'll keep working through the kind of speakers list here. I see Chris Mooney up next.
Okay, thanks, Peyton. Can somebody elaborate? I think during that presentation, you guys said that maybe real world finance opt to do a MetaDAO instead. It seems like there's maybe even another like non-KPI path, or am I misunderstanding?
I saw 𝘠𝘠𝘠 mention that, but I haven't seen any MetaDAO MIPs pass what that would even look like. So it sounds to me like it would be premature. I think regardless, if the MetaDAO and Endgame proposals pass, I think there's still going to be some sort of accountability needed to MKR holders, and our plan could certainly be adjusted to achieve that. That said, we're really thinking about a more like short to medium term objective with the initial reallocation of capital, and then having these sorts of high level KPIs to make sure that Maker holders are getting the value that they deserve from allocating capital to these core units.
Did that answer your question fully, Chris, or do you have more to build?
Yeah, I mean, I probably have a lot more on this, just to sort of discuss, but I don't want to like kind of tank the room and ask a bunch of sort of questions. It seems to me that this process could actually, be fine as a sort of first step, but I just want to sort of highlight that this is sort of how old centralized companies do it. And while there's wisdom in following that model, I think there's for us probably a better way to eventually like codify this on chain. I know we can't just like, build Rome in a day, but this seems like it's going to be a very governance heavy process, a lot of coordination. And I don't see that as while I think we do better than a lot of other things in the space, I don't see governance as our strong suit. It'd be better if we had a good roadmap to get this sort of budgeting process to a place where things were considerably more objective and straight based on like, sort of cost and profit on chain. And that, that looks probably a lot more like what MetaDAOs are, which is why I sort of asked the question. But yeah, so all that's more of a statement. But yeah, I'll let people keep going. Here's a question. Is there a path you guys see where maybe there's a hybrid approach, like you either choose some sort of straight percentage cut to your CU, or you follow this like KPI model? Like, do we see like a hybrid approach here that is viable?
It's not something we've really considered because how this will look from like a maker holder delegate standpoint as we go through the KPI creation and like submitting all the budgets to the delegates and maker holders is that they're going to get like a long list of like every single line item from the core units, and they're each going to be broken out into 3 different categories. 1, your baseline; 2, your expansion / growth plans; and then 3, your contingency. Like, what are your first 2 things on your list to cut if you need to cut your budget by 10 to 20%. And then the idea is that we consolidate this list, have a DAO-wide view of the protocol, and then the delegates and maker holders essentially rank these different growth, baseline, and contingency line items, and then figure out, okay, like if we only want to spend 30 million and the total budget request from core units is 35 million, okay, like what's the highest priority, and then kind of rank them, and that's how they figure out how to make cuts rather than blanketly cutting 10% from each core unit. And I guess like to address the first statement, this is just a first step. Like, we're going from 0 to 1 in terms of what we feel there should be the level of accountability there is for core units to the DAO. And an ideal state for what we envision is having mostly, if not entirely, like on-chain quantitative metrics. Now, it's obviously not possible today. We can envision a future where almost all the data is coming from on-chain. That's completely transparent and immutable, and everyone can we can build dashboards on top of that, and so everyone can have full transparency to what the core units are delivering. We definitely understand that this process is not perfect. It's going to take many iterations to get to a point where we feel satisfied with it, and it's going to require an upfront investment like any new process would. But we're not afraid to invest that time. We feel like the invested time will be well worth it for the DAO long term.
Thanks for the response there, Mark. And
Yeah,
Chris,
thanks, guys.
for bringing up those points. Robert, you've been patiently waiting for a while with your hand up, so go ahead, take it away.
I know that's unusual for me. I'm trying to follow the process and be a good participant. So I think this is a question. So when I take a look at any sort of the effectiveness of a proposed solution, especially this one, we're walking into this with three areas, like what we know, and this is what I'll call the agreeable truth. And then we also look at like, what's the alignment that we have? Not necessarily agreement, but alignment on, more of strategic goals, objectives, all of that. And the third thing is that what's the level of dependency that we have amongst our teams? And so when you take a look at these three things in the way of goal setting, is that this is going to determine how meaningful and impactful the goals and the objectives that we set for each of the core units. And the less agreement you have, the less alignment you have, and the more dependency you have, makes those, call them KPIs, call them whatever we're calling them, makes them very small. And I question whether or not that's actually meaningful. So is this exercise for us as a DAO community, is this going to be meaningful, or is it just going to take up a lot of time and not really make impacts, but we feel better about doing it, but it didn't really help? And so I wonder if something like, in the chat, when you take a look at some of the comments from 𝘬𝘪, are there alternative, more straightforward alternative proposals as maybe V1 or iteration 1, where we can take that, build on it, and then potentially go into, all the hard work and effort that strategic finance has put into putting together a model that they're presenting. And I just want to take a moment to say I appreciate the amount of energy and effort that that team and others have been putting into this, because I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and energy. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. And 𝘬𝘪 actually indicated he'd be willing to talk a little bit about potential alternatives. So happy to turn the mic over to him, sketch out what that looks like.
Yes, thank you. And I do hope I'm understandable, because I am in a quite busy train, but as long as it lasts. So I think this is a very useful exercise to try and work out, because of course we do want to keep these goals in mind of having measurable results and having the decision-making tools to allocate funds where they matter the most. And so I think in general, this is a very useful exercise that we're doing here, but it also shows the challenges. And I think it goes by the comments that people are making. And I think building up these KPIs is probably something that would better be separated from the core unit structure, because I think one of the issues today is that we see everything through core unit lens. And the problem is, think about tech ops. What are the KPIs of tech ops supposed to be? They're necessary. If they don't run their core unit, our infrastructure will fail. At the same time, it's very, very difficult to link them on their core unit level to an immediate profitable outcome. And I know this challenge has been recognized and some solutions have been put forward, but I think we remain with the fundamental issue of we can't see everything on the core unit level. We need to think on more a product-centric approach. And if you chop that down on a time basis, so that would be a project approach. So the alternative I have in mind is that, first of all, we revisit an old idea, which is to vote regularly on a budget cap. And I think this is the weakness of the vote that passed to bring the organization back to break even, which I'm the first one to say that we need to respect the MTR voters' decisions, and I'm intending to do so. But the fact is that this signal or this particular vote, it doesn't have a timeline, and it doesn't really consider, or I don't believe that the consequences have been considered. So it's just a very general signal that we need to get closer to break even, which I think everyone is on the same line. So what would improve if we have a regular vote on the budget cap, then MTR voters, they can pace the cuts more, right? So for example, they could start with a very very small cut of, for example, 5%, so that we can like test run the allocation system. So regularly, for example, on a quarterly basis, vote on a budget cap, let's say in 6 months, so that core units have 6 months to adapt. Once you have that in place, have the core units work together to submit projects with a budget attached. So for example, tech ops may not have a single project that they submit, but they may be part of multiple projects that are proposed by multiple core units. Put the maximum number on the cap and a minimum, maybe minimum number is maybe not useful, but we need to make sure there are not too many projects. And then very simply, and I know it's still complex, but the delegates, MKR voters, they should then prioritize the basket of projects just from 1 to however many there are. And at the end of the quarter, when the new budget cap is applied, only the top projects that fit within the budget cap, they make it. And then make sure you get the timing right so that there is time enough for core units to adapt their the changes, and that we don't have situations where suddenly next month you're without a job or something. But we can deal with that by dealing with the timing. So and that would be the alternative, and the project structure, I think, should have very clear objectives and key results, KPIs, whichever form it takes, to make it easy to evaluate these. The other thing we need to take care of is that these projects, they can be repeatable. So one, for example, L2 obviously is not a project you can do in a single quarter, but what you do then is you simply chop it up. So the project is to continue working on our L2 development, and that could be an alternative that makes it much more focused on the added value that core units are delivering individually, but also together to do that. So that's it, and I'll write it up in more detail. There are definitely challenges there too, but I do think it would be a more practical approach.
Yeah, I don't really see these approaches as mutually exclusive, and the maker holders are more than welcome to change or adjust the budget cap on whatever interval they deem appropriate. But while our revenues are where they are, I think until there's a meaningful change in the revenue, I think that the target is kind of been aligned on by maker holders. And certainly, when teams are writing up their expansion and contingency, breakouts in their budgets, that should also be tied to what projects they're going to work on. Because if you're cutting 20% of your budget, you're going to have to cut certain projects, and those trade-offs should be readily presented to the DAO and to all holders. So you cut by 20%, you're going to probably delay L2s by a significant amount of time, for example. But,
yeah,
that can be made for
can I for a second explain how that would relate? So if the core units are working together to present these projects, and if there is a budget cap on every project, and keep in mind this is only for us, it's only for maybe 3 or maybe 6 months that the project lasts, right? So it would only be, in the case of L2, a portion of the roadmap. When they do that, they are basically put for the choice. What you could do is take all the activities you're doing as a core unit, just dump it in a single project and put that up for a vote. But that would be Russian roulette. It's if your project doesn't make it, suddenly your core unit is laid off. So that's probably not a good idea. A better idea is to think about the work that you're doing. Define, for example, 4 or let's say 4 projects that you're working on, and you put those up for the vote. Now, remember, you may not be the only core unit working on any one of those projects. So that is another kind of flexibility you have to express the value that you're bringing to the DAO. So for example, SES might submit a project to to continue its incubation program. Team 1, Team 2 is the second project. Then we have a cross-core unit project with another bunch of core units, and then we have a project number 4. They each have a budget attached. We put them each up for the vote, and maybe one of those projects may not make it. And that's how you can like gradually push core units in the direction of delivering the value that is, that would be prioritized by MPR holders. And I think that the other advantage is that you can start this very gently. You can start with just a very small decrease of the budget, and then like see what happens until we get the process right. And then and then once it starts working well, you start pushing more aggressively towards the break even. And the outcome is the same, but I think there will be a much more gradual process that will allow us to have a better learning curve.
Thanks for expanding there, 𝘠𝘬𝘪. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to get to, Mark, or wanted to respond there. Cool. Thank you. A lot of chat going back and forth, again, a little hard to summarize, but particularly about the productivity hit that this might cause, right? If we're requiring this extra work to be done, obviously someone has to do it, and some debate, I guess, over to how much that may impact. But I do see Strategic Finance saying here that they do think this will be like largely limited to facilitators. And then we have a MakerMan indicating that thinks like 10% productivity cut might be a reasonable estimate for implementing this.
Oh, let me speak in on there, Peyton, because we debated that. So my point is pretty simple, is that, you're going to do all these KPIs, it's going to cost effort, right? And you have to, for every effort that you do, you have to look at some sort of return, right? A lot of people judge that monetarily. You can judge it maybe as a long-term, you can judge it as an efficiency thing, which again is going to hit the bottom line, right? And so you ask a basic question. We're going to make a move. How much is it going to cost us? What do we expect as the return? How are we going to measure it? I'm always coming back to that every time, and I don't see answers here on any of that.
So I'd say the hit's going to depend a lot on how the CU is structured. If they've already got internal metrics to like evaluate their performance, then all they have to do is, present those to us. And yes, they'll be fine. But yeah, if you've got like a 1 or 2 man CU where they're just doing their work and they're not really evaluating performance or checking any of this, it's going to take them a lot more work. So really this would kind of push CUs in a particular direction on how they organize.
Yeah, I mean, I personally really struggled to see how this would be a 10% productivity hit. That's implying 200 hours for every single contributor across the entire DAO. It's 5 weeks dedicated only to this, which I find hard to believe even for one facilitator to spend that much time on it. And they're the ones that are going to be doing almost everything for this when it comes to a CU perspective. There's certainly going to be a time investment needed from the delegates and from maker holders that want to be involved in this process. But, I think that this accountability is inevitable. I just think there needs to be, a more, accountable system for the DAO. Otherwise, the principal agent problem is just going to spiral out of control.
I see it, to me, it's the key challenge we have are the dependencies. And today, if I take a look around at most work requires development time, which requires engineers, which there's only so many places to go to get the engineers. And so what I see is a lot of horse trading to be able to line up who's going to do what when to ensure that we can have meaningful KPIs. That's where I think the work is for me. But then I also have to ask, well, how do I determine if treasury management is a priority for the DAO? I think it is, but I'm not sure. So then we have to ground that in something. Well, how do we get that information? Well, someone needs to vote, right? We need to have a poll. The community needs to be involved in that. And then we have relative priorities. How important is treasury management versus say something like RWAs or a D3M or a layer 2 solution. So that's where it gets challenging for me.
Just let me add one thing. So when I put this in perspective, you know, you can debate the number of work. Let's forget the 10%, right? We know it's going to be an additional productivity hit. And the question is, what's the gain? I think a lot of us here would agree we want to go in this direction. But when I think about how Maker makes the next $1 million to $5 million, I ask the question about whether focusing on KPIs is actually going to do that, or whether we get an RWA out the door is, right? There's some sensitivity here to, at least on my seat, that I want CUs to have some flexibility in how they do things. And you keep trying to tie their hands, you're just going to load them down with more and more stuff. And you can do something simpler that's more broad, which is just a general reward incentive for some basic KPI thing, right? That's important to everyone versus doing it individually. And that's my whole point here, is just to keep it simple, test it, measure it, right? Have a goal in mind and look at what it costs and talk about that.
But that doesn't really address the whole, there's a incentive for each CU to get their own budget up, right? They're going to make more off of that than any small incentive we give based on all of our performance. So it's a kind of a tragedy of the commons if we just rely on, general overall performance. One advantage of this will be, like, as I think Robert had just noted, there's a limitation on maybe engineers. That's something that KPI should expose, right? We should be getting CUs that are saying, I couldn't meet my KPIs because I couldn't get enough engineering time. And that tells the DAO, okay, we need more people in this particular role. So it's not just about hiring or firing someone. It's about finding out where our pain points and weaknesses are.
Yeah, I'll just add to what 𝘰𝘳𝘦 said to Robert's comment by saying that, the facilitator is probably not going to come up with the perfect KPIs before speaking with maker holders and delegates to understand their priorities. That's why, we're going to have essentially a 3-week period where, there's going to be meetings where all the maker holders and delegates can come and speak to the facilitators directly, and they can have these conversations publicly, transparently, out in the open to have alignment. And maybe they're not fully aligned after one call, but over that period, I feel like there should be, they should have the ability to meet in some sort of middle ground, make sure that maker holders are getting, a fair end of the deal. So right now, there's effectively zero oversight. Quorians can, loosely do whatever they want. There's no standardized reporting. Varun quoted that as saying, Quorians operate like black boxes. And, the sentiment from the people that aren't, reading forms every day is that people are just getting paid exorbitant salaries and they have no idea what they're getting for it. So, I feel like bringing this level of visibility and transparency to the DAO, having these open conversations where anyone can contribute, will, add a lot of credibility to Maker in the processes that we're trying to build here.
Thanks for adding there, Mark. And I appreciate that there's a lot of overlap in some of the stuff we're saying here. So definitely seems like it's a prime place to collaborate and further explore. All right, I'd love to do a little check-in here, maybe with Thomas, and see you introduced the discussion topic. How are you feeling on it? Any other aspects you wanted to cover?
I think we're good. Thank you, Peyton.
Awesome. So looking at the time here, we are kind of inching close there. So did maybe want to start unwinding. So I'll make this a call. Last comments or questions. All right, excellent. So might do just a brief recap of today. Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about this budget reallocation, different ways to kind of address spending in a decentralized organization. As a reminder, that is kind of based on a signal that is ending tomorrow. So obviously, if you haven't voted, please consider doing so based on what we discussed today. Another really important factor about signals is you can change your vote at any time while they're running. So if some of the stuff we discussed here today changes your opinion, do be sure to reflect that on the poll so we can kind of gauge that community sentiment going forward. So yeah, reminder that ends tomorrow. So please do consider doing that if that appeals to you. Cool. Another thing I'd like to start doing here, if you go to the next slide, Thomas, is just to briefly highlight some of the calls that are coming up over the next week. All these times are in UTC from our calendar, though that screenshot is a little early, so it doesn't have, I believe, Code Knight's delegation, meet your delegate call. So maybe I'll update that so if anyone going back later can see. But yeah, as a reminder, there's a link to this on every executive vote to the public calendar. So you can add this to your personal calendars. Makes it really easy to see when there are open discussions going on, things you might want to join based on your interests. And you'll know same time, same place for next week here. So thank you again. There's been a ton of chat going back and forth. Would just really encourage everyone to continue that energy, bring it back to the forums as we kind of continue to discuss the best path forward as a DAO. So thank you everyone for joining, particularly if this was your first time. Hope you felt welcome and encouraged to hop on the mic and join us for these discussions in the future. Thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.